especially online security. But I promise we're going to have fun with it. We will not get too technical. We're going to keep it fairly light, some helpful tips and tricks to keep you safe online. All right, a little bit of an introduction. My name is Grant, as you heard. I graduated right across the street from Calvin. I then worked for Apple at the store for a couple of years. And I will admit that I do have a bias. I love my Apple products. But for those of you PC users, I'm here for you as well. My wife and I operate RGA tech support here in Grand Rapids, and we went into business just to serve those in technological support. And that can look, a lot of people will stop me and say, all right, what kind of technology support do you do? And at this point I say, anything that plugs in. And that somehow applies to vehicles at this point too. So anyways, as you come across technical issues, I've got a card up here. You're more than welcome to reach out if I can be of any assistance. To set expectations for this class, I want you all to focus on gathering one thing. I always tell everyone you can be inundated with information. Try to hold on to one piece of information that you're going to put into practice. And if that's the case, if you can do that, if you can translate it all the way back in front of your computer, your phone, your tablet, then it's a success. These are the items we're going to be talking about. Of course, you saw it on the flyer. We're going to be talking about passwords, tips and tricks for email, some web guidance. The web is a very large place, and to cover all the different ways to keep you safe on the web, we'd be here all day. I'm going to give you some high-level tips just to keep you on the straight and narrow on the web. And then, of course, we'll have time at the end for questions. I often tell people that we work with, the more you know about technology, the less you know. And so I hope none of you expect to walk out of this room at the end experts in technology. I tell you, there's a lot to it. But as questions come to you, please do raise your hand. Ask them in the moment. I'm happy to jump to them. If I can't answer it, we'll loop back to it at the end of class and talk about it further, okay? All right. Passwords, everyone in here's favorite topic. And I say that smiling because we are all floundering with passwords. The last time I checked, I was up to 312 passwords. That's not great. I'm barely holding it together, but it's the state of things. We're currently just inundated with online accounts that require a password to verify we are who we say we are. So for passwords, I've broken it into three groups: the problem, the reality, and the recommendation. Okay, and I'm sure we don't have to talk very long about the problem. They're required everywhere, unfortunately. Currently, in 2022, we provide and transmit more personal information electronically, more now than ever. And that, I mean, you can think about it. We're talking about medical records. We're talking about appointments. We're talking about financial institutions. All of this stuff, whether we opt in or not, trickles onto the web. And we have access to it, and because we have access to it, the password is the single line of defense, proving that we are who we say we are, versus someone impersonating you. Our personal information is accessible and validated through multiple online accounts. So what that means is, I can't go to my financial institution and say, online and say, I am Grant because of who I am. I actually need an account that they say, you know this information and we know this information, therefore we know it's you. Okay? See how that's tricky? So we're validating ourselves based off of online information. We're going to dive deeper into that a little bit, but the picture I'm trying to paint for you here is passwords are really important. Online attacks are real, and your password is often, again, it's the only thing that differentiates you from someone impersonating you. It's the correct characters. Unfortunately, technical impersonation has become easier and more common. Have any of you ever received a phone call from someone claiming to be Microsoft or PayPal or your financial institution? What's happening is they're getting crafty. Online threats, they're no longer an email that had an attachment that was malicious. Now it's actually people impersonating an entity who they think they're impersonating an entity to try to trick you into providing information, important information. And we're going to go over that technical impersonation more in detail as well, just so you can spot it. So when it comes to passwords, now this is kind of the other side of things. We all, as consumers, we know what it's like to have a password, and they say it has to be 8 characters, it has to have a symbol, has to have an uppercase, all of these credentials. This is the other end of it. This is the end of it from someone with resources and capability. If they were trying to break into your account, these are the methods that they're using. The first one is called a phishing attack. Phishing is a fraudulent attempt to obtain sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, credit card details by disguising as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. So that's what we just referenced, where someone claims to be who they're not actually. This one is very common, and I can't really emphasize it enough. Be on the watch out, or keep an eye out for someone claiming to be who they're not. It will come up through an email, it will come through a phone call, it can come through social platforms as well, so just be vigilant for this type of attack. The next one is called a brute force attack. Brute force attack consists of an attacker submitting many passwords or passphrases with the hope of eventually guessing correctly. The attacker systematically checks all possible passwords, passphrases, until the correct one is found. Just wrap your head around that. All passwords, it's essentially throwing all the words and seeing if any of them give them access, okay? Now the next one, so a brute force can consist, if my password is 123 Grant, brute force is going to be the one that gets through. A dictionary attack is exactly what it sounds like. A dictionary attack tries only those possibilities which are most likely to succeed, typically derived from a list of words, for example, a dictionary. So a dictionary attack is quite literally having a digital copy of a dictionary and trying all the words in it, okay? And again, I know it's kind of abstract, but what we're talking about is a computer sitting there and trying all possible options. When we hear about in the news large entities being hacked, typically we have a picture of a person sitting in a dark room typing in passwords, but in reality, they're hitting run on a program, and then they're going away. And what's happening is a computer is trying all known combinations, okay? So those are the methods of attempting to get into your account. Now I want to take this one step further just to kind of really set the tone of what this means for us as users, of online users. Because my goal is not to scare you away from going online. Online has an incredible amount of resources for all of us, but we have to do it with a little bit of caution. All right, so this is an example of what a password in 2000, and it is this red text here. Okay, so security 1, that is our collective password, okay? That's our collective password for our, let's say, our online bank account, okay? In 2000, do I have any guesses how long it would take for a computer to break into an account? Any guesses? It's a substantial duration of time. How about I get you guys started, all right? In 2000, a computer running nonstop trying to get into this account with a password of security 1, it would take 3 years 10 months, and 14 days of consistently trying, okay? And note that that is 4, 6, 8, that's 9 characters. It took 3 years, 10 months, 14 days. But of course, I know all of you love it as much as I do. Technology evolves. And what that means is the cost of processing power comes down, which means they get a little bit stronger tools. All right, so now we're jumping to 2015. Our password has not changed. We're all guilty of it. How long does it take in 15 years for this computer now to get into our account? Someone throw out a guess.
10 hours.
10 hours, we've got one. Anyone else guess?
15 months.
15 months. We're down to 3 months, 3 months, 17 days. So we're getting faster. It's not great for us. All right, we're at 2020. Our password has not changed in 20 years. We are, any guesses, what are we down to for this computer to get into our account?
10 hours.
7 hours. 10 is a good guess. It's 7 hours. Now that is, don't worry, we've got one more. So now we are at 2022. Our password has changed now. We have decided to go capital S. How long does it take? Any guesses?
25.
So we're at 9 characters still, but 1 capital. We are at 1 hour. So you can see our character count has stayed the same. We've added a capital, but the processing power, meaning how fast this computer can try these combinations, has skyrocketed. So what that means is every time we forget a password and go in and it says reset your password, that is why you're seeing now you need a longer password. Now you need a symbol. Now you need a capital. Because the more you put, the more creative you get with your password, the longer that password is able to maintain others from entering your account. Again, that's just an example. I hope none of you have a 22-year-old password. And if so, that is your homework. We need to get those updated. But do follow the instructions that the program gives you. Oftentimes, I'm guilty of this when I see you now need a new password. I often start with, what am I going to remember? And that is, unfortunately, we're not at that point. And I think that's a slide coming up. We are no longer to the point where our passwords are made to be remembered. So we're going to have to talk about ways to write them down and keep them safe. I wanted to show you this screen really quick. So this is a study done by the Hive system, and it just it displays that little exercise we went through in a different format. What we have here is the number of characters, the numbers only. So if we had an 11 character password and it was only numbers, the computer would be in like that. That's all it'd take. It'd be milliseconds. You can see just the scale. So the more we add, the longer it takes. And I don't know if any of you are feeling ambitious, but if you have an 18 character password that contains numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and symbols, we're at 438 trillion years. So at that point, they can have my account. I don't really need it. But this is beneficial to see, okay? I feel like oftentimes when we're thinking about passwords, and perhaps I'm mistaken on this, but we go about passwords in the sense that this will be good for now. I think we need to change how we think about passwords, and it needs to become something that we're updating frequently. And I know that's giving us all homework, but unfortunately there are individuals and entities trying to get in, and so we have to be constant, we have to stay on defense, okay? Let's see. Perfect. All right, so I've beaten you all up on passwords. Let's talk about, let me lift you up a little bit. So we are all dealing with passwords. It's unfortunately, there's not a person out there that's got them perfect. Even myself, who stands up and talks to people about passwords, I have to work at passwords as well. Fortunately, there are some tips and tricks to make things a little bit easier, and that's what we're going to discuss now. So the first option, store your passwords in a central location, a notebook or a locked spreadsheet. We have a lot of clients that go about it this way. There are trade-offs to this method. For example, I've had clients have a super secret logbook of their passwords, and that book travels with them, and that book went missing. And now they are locked out of all their accounts because they don't know their passwords, and someone therefore could have that book. So if you do have a notebook for passwords, do not let it travel. Keep it in one space or one place and keep it safe. Don't let those go walking away. If you have a locked spreadsheet, and that's a computer spreadsheet, make sure you remember the password to that spreadsheet, because we've seen it go the other way, where it's so secure we can't even get into the spreadsheet of locked passwords. So give yourself a break, lock that spreadsheet, but also keep that password to the spreadsheet safe. Next option, how many of you have mobile phones? What about smartphones? Yeah? Great. So there's some great tricks, maybe I'll call them features for smartphones. There are what is called password applications, such as 1Password, LastPass, Keeper, or Dashlane. Has any of you heard of those?
What is that?
So all of those are all individual companies that all they do is manage passwords. For a long time there, I was using 1Password, and it was exactly that. It was a program on my phone exclusively for keeping track of my passwords. There is the next iteration of Password Keeper that we're going to talk about next. But those four options, 1Password, LastPass, Keeper, and Dashlane, those are all good programs that keep your data safe.
Do you go into an app to get to that?
Correct. So the program itself is an app. So on your phone, for example, if you wanted to store all your passwords in one central place, you would download an app called 1Password. You would log in, and there would all your passwords be.
When I was at the Apple store one time and I didn't remember my password, the person there said, well, I just keep mine in a notebook on my phone, and my phone is locked. So that's what I've been doing. Now, is that safe?
Do you have a passcode on your phone?
Yes.
Good answer. So that is, I like to think about password management as how many layers of security can I put between myself and someone trying to get to my passwords. I know for passwords on the phone, so the Note app, the question specifically was, I keep my passwords on my phone in the Note app. That is okay. There's a phone passcode that's keeping that information safe. Additionally, the phone is encrypted, so it's safe that way. And I know if it's an iPhone, you said Apple Store, so you can lock that Note as well. And so, to an extent, if you put the passwords too far out of access, what happens is you end up resetting it, and then you don't update your notes, and then you're living in this dual world of passwords. So I would say you're safe. Passcode. Don't take the passcode off your phone, but I do like the way you're doing it. We do that often for clients. Just writing it down somewhere. The Notes app on an iPhone is a great way to do it. All right. Yes.
What was that other one?
Dashlane. Dashlane.
And we'll get copies or flyers of this information that you can all get also, okay? Afterwards.
Yes, sir.
Does it require a subscription to use these apps?
These do, yes. So some of these are going to be a one-time purchase, and others are going to be a monthly subscription. Now I've got one other option for you that we're going to talk about next that I really like. So hang tight for me. I wanted to make a point in regards to passwords. I think we all can understand. We all know that frustration where you have it written down, you sit down, you type it in, and it says wrong password, and you think, how could that be? It's written down. All of these apps, they're only going to be as accurate as the time you put into it. And so you have, kind of like a checkbook to balance, you have to actually put in the time when a password changes to updating the account, updating your app, updating wherever you keep your passwords. You've got to make it a process. All right, next, the newer devices offer hardware features for passwords. So we've kind of just spent some time talking about where we're at with passwords. What we're going to move into next is ways to keep your information, your passwords, ways to store your passwords, but also some hardware tricks to make life a little bit easier. The first one we're going to talk about, how many of you have an Apple device? iPhone. Okay, good number. So those of you that have an iPhone, this function right here is called Face ID. What Apple has done here is they've created a front-facing camera that stores, it shoots out 30,000 invisible pixels on your face, okay, with infrared. And what it does is it maps your face. That information is turned into a mathematical representation of your face. That mathematical representation is encrypted, and it is stored only on your device. So a lot of times we'll look and the news will be talking about facial recognition. This feature is very different. It is unlocking your phone based off of your face, but it is never leaving your phone. And so, for example, if this person drops their phone and they have to get a new one, you'll have to reset up Face ID because it's only stored on your device. So now you're thinking, okay, Grant, now my device knows my face. How far does that get me? So what Apple has done is has created Face ID to work in tandem with passwords. So as we are using our mobile devices and we log into an account, your phone will ask, do you want to store this password on your device? And if you select yes, the result is if you navigate to a website, it will log you in with your face. And why we're talking about this today is what's happening is we talked about how far we've come with passwords and how complicated they have to be to keep us safe. What's slowly happening is we're moving away from a world in which we have to retain those 8, 10, 12 character passwords, and we're going to slowly start to be validated with our device. So all of that to say is hang in there. It's getting easier, slowly but surely. That program I was referring to on your phone, so we have Face ID. The program that stores that information is called Apple Keychain. Let's see, how many of you have Apple computers? A few of you. What about Apple, like an iPad? Okay, good deal. Icloud Keychain remembers things so you don't have to. It autofills your information, like Safari usernames, passwords, credit cards, Wi-Fi networks, social logins, on any device that you approve. So what Apple has done is they've created this ecosystem. So if I navigate to my financial institution, Chase, so if I navigate to Chase and I punch in my login credentials, and my phone says, would you like Apple to retain this information? And I say yes. Later that night, when I pick up my iPad, it says it recognizes that I've been to Chase before on a different device, and it will autofill my password. So what's happening is your information is being shared, not your Face ID, but just your password is being shared between devices tied to you. So Apple Keychain, it's a great resource for those of you that have the Apple devices. I would really recommend it because it's built into the product and it's not an additional cost. So there's no subscription. It's part of what you already purchased. Questions on that? Yes.
on my keychain, when I go in, I have stored in it
Mm-hmm.
still my old passwords.
Mhm.
And I'm systematically trying to
Sure.
delete those, but
Yeah.
there's thousands of them. And
Yeah.
it keeps every one of those old ones, so.
Yeah, it's challenging. So what happens when you're using Keychain is that if I go to my financial institution and I punch in my email address and I type in what I think to be my password and it's the incorrect password, it will ask me, do you want me to store this? And when I say yes, all of a sudden it has two keychains. It has two passwords and one of them is correct and one of them isn't.
And then you can't, then you have to sign in with your Face ID again once you.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge. So just like the other applications we were talking about, there's still some maintenance required for password management. For your instance specifically, if you go to either on your tablet there under settings, and then there's a option for passwords, you can actually go through and clear out what you know to be incorrect. But there's no fast way to do it.
No, there isn't.
What I like to call that is I'm all about being productive on airplanes. So those of you that fly, I actually just gave my mom this advice. She's about to get on a plane. You can clean up contacts, erase photos, and erase passwords. Those are all things you can do in the air without any internet connection. And then when you land on the ground, it will sync, and you're better off for it. So keep that in mind. That one's for free. All right, let's keep on burning to email.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I have a YubiKey from
Okay.
my PC,
Sure.
from my laptop.
Mhm.
Would you make a comment about that?
Sure. So, YubiKey is a special type of encryption. It's a device to unlock electronics, and it's pretty great. I will say there's a technical element to it. How did you go about installing yours?
It came with instructions from the organization that I connect with.
Okay. So, and when you plug yours in, does it automatically unlock all of your accounts because that key is plugged in?
No, it's only attached to the accounts with that organization.
Okay. So this is another hardware solution for maintaining passwords.
And also to my Google Mail.
Perfect. So it's a good resource up until you lose it. So don't lose it. But being that it's tied to YubiKey, you'd probably be able to get a replacement. That is one that I've seen just a few times in the field, and so I need to buy myself one and get more familiar with it before I'm willing to endorse it. How about that? But you've had a good experience with it?
Yeah, the organization is Wycliffe Bible Translators, and they've put all of their internet security, email security on that YubiKey.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll do some digging and see if I can put my name behind it. I've seen them before and I've been impressed, but I've never actually pulled the trigger and bought one for myself. So
I have an extra if you want it.
oh, I might chase you down after this. All right, email. Email is a fantastic platform for communication, self-authentication, and digital archiving our information. Here are a few tips to take your email use to the next level. All email providers have out-of-the-box settings for filtering spam. We collectively are responsible for personalizing these filters. So what that means is, no matter your provider, they're doing their best to keep spam out of your inbox. Okay, spam is those emails that are sent to thousands of people trying to catch a couple of us. All those emails are doing their best. All of those providers are doing their best. Some of them, they get through the filters, and so it's on us as the consumer to say, an example would be, let's say PayPal kept emailing me and I had no interest in using PayPal. It's on me to mark that as spam, as in stop showing it to me, I'm not interested. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Okay.
How do we do that?
we'll get into that just here in a moment.
Okay.
Unsubscribe often. If the message is not of value to you, then unsubscribe, then delete it. So this is one that's actually gotten a little bit easier. A tip I'm going to give all of you early on is, if you go to your email at the top where your search bar is and you type in unsubscribe, it will actually show you all of the messages. Again, all emails are legally required to have unsubscribe. So if you search unsubscribe, it's going to show you all of your messages that you can unsubscribe for. Now, they are required to have it. Some of them make it extremely challenging. And of course, there are tricks that they can do to keep you subscribed. But I'm a firm believer on, if I don't care to see it, don't send it to me. And so I'll take the time. Yes?
When you say unsubscribe, they want your email. Is that okay to put your email in there? Yeah.
Yep. Some of them, I always get frustrated by that, because if they're smart enough to email me, they should be smart enough to know who it is that doesn't want their message. But some of them will require, okay, who do we unsubscribe form, and that's okay to do. You'll have to keep an eye out, because sometimes what they'll do, if I understand this correctly, legally they're required to unsubscribe you, but if they get, let's say you go to the mall and you see a beautiful car that you would like to win, and you fill out your name and your email, and you drop it in that canister, that entity that just collected your information will take it and sell it, okay? And so all of a sudden you're getting a whole bunch of new emails that you never saw before. How they email you can change. And what I mean by that is, if there are multiple divisions and you keep getting an email from, let's say, PayPal corporate, and let's say a different entity of PayPal also has access to my email. So when you unsubscribe, you can be unsubscribing from one entity in a large entity. And so that's one of the loopholes they'll play. So anyways, the message there is, be persistent, never stop unsubscribing. That's the only way to regain control. Now, the other point I want to make about emails is, what happens with all of us is our email, when we sign up for an email account, the longer our email is out there, the cheaper it becomes to be purchased. And so, for example, I have my email. I've had it for, I would say, probably 15 years now. And the longer it's out there, the more transactions, the more entities purchase, mail, and sell my information. That's what they're doing on the back end. And so I have had it where a client has been getting thousands of emails a day because they've had their email for 20-something years, and I've had them cut ties with the email and start fresh, because we can get inundated with that many messages. So do know, at some point, if you are overwhelmed with the number of messages you get daily, there is a point where it's okay to cut ties with your old email. And we'll talk about, if you are in the market for a new email, steps for that. Email messages. I like to remind people that even messages from people you recognize, don't trust, okay? Keep an eye out on all messages that come through. And I can't stress that enough. We do tech support all over Grand Rapids, and we have people that get scammed weekly. So keep an eye on your email, even if it's an old friend and they're asking an odd question. Trust your gut. Keep an eye out for it, because oftentimes it will be a friend's account that got breached, or it will be just a fake account impersonating someone you know. So keep an eye out for those. So here's an example of how to mark a message as spam. So this is actually a Gmail account right here. Actually, I'm going to do this with the laser. So this is a Gmail account. You'll see on the left-hand side, and this is common for most inboxes, you'll have a checkbox. If I didn't want, let's say, this top message, I would check this right here, and then it gives me an option under these three little dots up here to move to, and I'm gonna move that message to my spam folder. Now, some entities are gonna call it a junk folder. That's where you wanna send it. Vice versa, it's not a bad idea to check your spam and junk folder, because occasionally a message that was sent intentionally to you will get stuck in there. So keep an eye on those folders as well. All right, so this is a phishing example. I told you we'd get to them. So here's a message from Chase Bank. It looks pretty great. We've got the Chase logo at the top. We've got the right color blue. For a long time, you would be able to spot a phishing email by the grammatical errors. It's not the case anymore. It's clean. The links work. They've got the right corporate address in the bottom. The one area they're not able to spoof is where the message is going. So after up here, where you see the Chase QuickPay team, no reply alert spchase.com at higherlimits.com. So I like to remind people that after the at, entities such as financial institutions, nonprofits, everyone, you pay big dollars for what's behind the at. So if you get a message from, let's say, Apple, it's going to say, let's say, our retail team at apple.com. Keep an eye on this, because this is what you can't fake. It's the kind of the classic sign of who the message is coming from. Now, some of our email providers do us a disservice and hide this, and so it will just say Chase QuickPay, but there's always a drop-down arrow to see who it came from. So if something doesn't feel right, look at who it came from. If you don't recognize it, it's definitely going to be spam. It's probably a phishing attempt. Let's see. So here's another one. So this is actually for an accountant firm that reached out, and they actually hired us to test their employees. So what they wanted us to do is to do a phishing attempt to see if any of their employees would fall for it. So we sent out an email on behalf of the accounting firm from the owner and said, we are taking an audit of the most commonly used computer applications. Because again, a phishing attempt isn't going to be, hi Grant, what's your credit card number? Sometimes it's just going to be basic information like, what programs are you using? So we asked this team, what programs are you using? Reply with up to 3 applications that you use regularly. And believe it or not, we got some of them. So keep an eye out. You never know. It might be me testing you too. So just be careful. We had some of the team fooled by this. Some of them spotted it right away because he doesn't sign his name. The owner doesn't sign his name. So anyways, keep an eye out. Let's see, you can see on this one. Did you see, this is what the message looked like. We had his name, but at the top, if you clicked on his name, it would show info@rgatechsupport.com. So you can see I was able to impersonate his name, but I couldn't hide my email address. So keep an eye on that. All right, phishing tips. Check who sent the message, and if it's, again, after the @ symbol, that's the point that you need to keep an eye on. If something seems wrong, contact the person or organization the email came from. Use a known number. So this is a common mistake that I see. So what happens is a client will receive an email from Chase saying fraudulent purchase. They'll check up here and they'll check at the top and it will say that's not the right Chase. Something seems odd. But then they'll go to the bottom and use the phone number on the bottom. And guess what? The phone number is not right either. So they find themselves in the phishing scheme. So what I would do in that situation is if I got an email from Chase and it didn't seem right, I would go online and search Chase, customer support, and call that number rather than the number served up to me. It seems silly, but in a moment of panic, they really are very good about catching us at like perfectly the wrong time. Financial institutions will not ask for your information through email. And also, if any emails come in that detect a virus, chances are that's the virus itself. And again, I use virus loosely. Back when we had, I would say the early 2000s where viruses were very prevalent, what's happened is our computers have gotten a lot better, a lot more secure, and so it's a lot harder to get a virus on a machine. And so it's easier to trick the person than the machine at this point. So that's why they're doing phishing attempts. Email providers. Not everyone's always thrilled about this, but I'm just being honest up here. These are email providers that are doing a good job, and these are email providers that are doing less than a good job. The name of the game is you have to picture your email. Again, we talked about the value of email. It is used to identify, to validate you are who you say you are. And so if your email is compromised, you're in a bad way. What's happened is there are some entities that dedicate a lot of resources to keeping individuals safe, and the bigger the team you have working on the platform, the more secure you are. And so these are the top three I see when I'm talking about time out working with people in Grand Rapids. That I'm not saying it's impossible, but those are good services at the moment. I run into instances where people are getting scammed out of these consistently. And what they will do is they will get access to your account, and then they won't do anything, they won't email anything other than they will enable email forwarding. And they will create, so for example, if I had a Comcast account, they would say grantaustin@comcast.net. They would forward messages to grantaustin1@comcast.net. They let those messages build up for a couple weeks, and then they would send a mass email to all those emails that came in saying, hey, this is Grant, I'm in a bad way, can you buy this for me? Sometimes they're successful. So all I want you to take from this is, if you're using one of these four, and ironically, these three are the same entity, and so it's probably part of the problem, but if you have one of those, it's probably worth transitioning to one of those three. Questions on that?
Where is AOL in there?
AOL is, let's see, Yahoo, AT&T, SBC Global. AOL lands on this list.
So I thought.
Also, this is a side note about AOL. If you're paying for AOL Gold, don't pay for that anymore. It's a service that's still active, but it's not worth your money.
How about Mozilla Thunderbird?
I'm not familiar with Mozilla Thunderbird. Is that an email provider?
No, not an email provider,
Is
it's a.
that a web
it's like
browser?
a Safari web browser.
Yeah, that's a web browser, correct?
There is a web browser, but the Thunderbird is different from the Firefox is this browser.
So what would we'll get into that after. I'm curious. Web browsing. All right, is this familiar to anyone? Uh-oh. It's not a joke. You are the 100,000th visitor. Claim you're winning. All right, so this is, where'd it go? This is the sad reality. What I wanted to draw your attention to is oftentimes these will beep, these will flash, these will make us panic a little bit. Some of them will give us an option to get out of it, an X. Some of them will wait 15 seconds before they give you an option out of it. I would encourage all of you, if you ever get to a point where this is on your screen and you can't close out of it, shut off your computer. I know we've all been trained against it. Hold that power button and turn it off. These pop-ups can get pretty persistent in regards to coming back on. So if you ever get to a point, give me a call or reach out to the resources around here. Don't call the phone number that pops up. Okay, those are part of the phishing scheme where these can kind of redirect traffic, and then the entity on the other end can claim to be someone they're not. So Don't trust phone numbers that pop up on your screen. All right, we're gonna dip into a little bit of technical, just briefly, just bear with me. I think it's helpful to learn. There's not gonna be a quiz at the end of class, so don't worry. This doesn't have to be your one thing. SSL, Secure Socket Layers, provides a secure channel between two machines or devices operated over the internet or internal network. One common example is when SSL is used to secure communications between a web browser and a web server. This turns a website address from HTTP or HTTPS, the S standing for secure. So all of that technical, what I really care about you knowing is this is going to show up on your web browser. All right, it's a little lock icon. What it means is you have a direct connection between your device to the device you're connected to. So whether that's your tablet to Chase Bank or to Amazon, whatever it might be, if it's not secure, it's just going to show this little icon down here. Sometimes they show it not secure. The only reason I'm telling you this is if you input your financial information, let's say you go to chasebank.com and you're getting a not secure message, it means that someone in the middle could pick off the information that you're typing in. And so when you're browsing, when you're navigating on the web, keep an eye out for that little locked icon. It's a very good thing to have. If you are on a website that doesn't have it, for example, let's say a blog, it's okay to be on that website, but don't input personal data. If you're inputting information, it could land in the wrong hands. All right, we've made it through, guys. We're just gonna do one more lap. My high points for you to take with you. All right. For passwords, give yourself a break. I know we all think, I'll remember that. We don't. And I say that collectively, we don't remember them, especially when we need them. I would encourage you to, if the entity doesn't require 8 characters, I would encourage you to have at least 8 characters. You saw how it goes. The more passwords you have, the better. And change your passwords often. I encourage my staff every year. I need them to update our internal passwords, so I would say same for you. Update your passwords as often as you can. Email, if it's not of value to you, unsubscribe. Teach your email what is spam and what is not. If you have a loved one's email land in your junk email, you can check that and send it back to your inbox telling the system, this is an okay email to show me. Be on defense, and I can't stress that enough. It is weekly. I've gotten to the point where I tell people it's not a matter of if, but really just when someone will attempt to get information from you. And lastly, the web. If something pops up like this, look for an exit, avoid clicking. This is very common on, let's say, a free app store game on a tablet. You've probably all seen it. If you download, let's say, Solitaire, if it's a free version, they're going to make their revenue off of showing advertisement, and the bigger it is, the more revenue they get. Sometimes it waits 5 seconds before it lets you exit out, so be patient, and if it's persistent, go ahead and shut the machine down. Watch out for fake tech support. They will attempt to create a sense of urgency. They'll tell you this, that, and other stuff just to try to get you to hand over information. I've never seen this, but I've heard if you tell them, those that call you and say, this is what's happening, if you tell them you don't have a computer, they'll hang up on you. So I challenge you. Tell them you don't have a computer, see what happens. If something feels off, turn off your computer and call your favorite technician. And that's it. What about questions? Anything come to mind as we're running through that? Yes?
2 things. What about usernames? Would you suggest those being changed and how often? And then the second one is on all my financial accounts, I have two-step.
Perfect, yes.
And do you recommend that?
Yes. So the first question was usernames, should those be updated? Second was two-step authentication. So the first question, usernames, there's value in it, but unfortunately the reality is we're stuck with a username. Very few services will give you the option to change that. In regards to security, I would rather see you change your password more frequently than go through the process of changing your username. Now, two-factor authentication, it's growing in popularity, and what that means is it is not just your password, but also a device tied to you that is used for authentication. And so, for example, when I log into my email, it says, what's the password? And I'll give the password, and I'll say, great, now send me the passcode that we just sent you. And if I can't provide that second passcode, it won't let me in. So it's a great resource. If you get any services asking if you should enable it, the first thing you probably should have is a smartphone that receives text messages. It's a little bit of it's not a great process. It's a second step, right, to get access, but it is, if security is the name of the game, that's an important one. So I would encourage you, as opportunities present, to go ahead and enable two-factor authentication. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I use Avast as antivirus, anti-malware protection.
Sure.
Is that a good product, would you say?
So we're at a strange crossroads for antivirus. The threat has changed. Some of our antivirus companies have actually gotten busted for creating viruses, and so it's a challenge. It's a challenge to recommend. And what happens is when you run an antivirus, your machine is constantly running, seeking out threats. What the reality of what's happening internally is, if you have 8 gigs of RAM, a lot of that RAM will be tied up protecting all of the entrance points, and your available resources will be very little. And so we're at this point where the built-in antivirus are pretty good. They're not perfect. If you're running an Apple device, I do not believe you need it. Apple is very limited where they'll allow you to install software from, which makes them very secure. Again, not perfect, but better. So my opinion on it is, if you're running a PC, Windows Defender has gotten a lot better. So depending on the price point, I probably wouldn't spend it. And if you did by chance get a virus, I would go ahead and install a free antivirus, and that would take care of the problem. So it all comes down to the price point too. We have some clients that ask the same question, and the result for them is they have a higher peace of mind knowing it's running and keeping them safe, and so it's worth the cost. So it all comes down to what it's worth to you. Yes?
I have a question about this. I got an email from my nephew who's an attorney this morning.
Okay.
And it says, don't forget this new Facebook rule starts tomorrow where they can use your photos. Don't forget the deadline is today. Is that a scam?
It doesn't sound very
No.
convincing.
But then it says you're supposed to put your finger on there to share, copy, and then paste it to your, it's a really long thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust it.
Okay.
Call the office.
Someone's using his name.
Well, I mean, it could be a number of things. Facebook's a whole other can of worms.
So I never get emails from him otherwise.
Yeah, I would say delete that one.
Okay. You have one?
Do you have a question?
I got a message a couple months ago, supposedly from Quicken, that I hadn't paid my annual user's fee. And I have never paid an annual user fee. I've been on Quicken since 2009. And I sort of ignored it, and all of a sudden I started having all kinds of problems in Quicken. The dates would be all shuffled, or accounts changed. I had one where they changed original entries back in 2009 from one account to another, which followed all the way down the bank or the checking account to the current date. Now, I finally paid the $50.
And what happened?
It's worked okay since then.
So you've never had to pay, you didn't pay, things started acting a little goofy, you paid, and the issues went away? That's a tough one. I would say this is a very real thing in my field. I call it cause versus correlation. Sometimes you'll get an email and you'll be like, that's a great question, and then you'll start to tie that email to other things, when in reality there's no correlation or no tie to it. So I would be, it sounds like in that specific instance, they needed their money. Typically what will happen is if they need their money and they don't get it, they'll lock you out. And it doesn't sound like you're locked out, it sounds like just some things started misbehaving. So I would be slow. If something feels off, I would be very slow to send anyone money. And of course, I'm always a resource if you want someone to step through that with you. Question?
I have heard that cell phones are more secure for doing banking than, like, for instance, your computer. Or does it matter? Mine.
It all comes down to your connection type, in my opinion. I would say if you were sitting in the airport and you're on your computer connected to a public network, there are a lot of creative things people could do to try to skim some information from you. But if you are sitting in your home and you have your phone on one table and your computer on the other, you're more or less safe. I will say updates are very important. A lot of times, we've kind of associated updates with change, probably because that's what's happened in the past. At this point, a lot of updates that are coming through are patches in security, trying to keep us safe from a new threat that's been discovered. So, as a recommendation, as you get notifications of an update is waiting, I would encourage you to do it. Those will keep you out of trouble. Back to your original question, if the computer on the table is a Windows 7, that's no longer a secure device. So those of you that are still running Windows 7, I would plan a shopping trip, because what's happened is Microsoft said, we are no longer going to protect this device. We're only going to protect our newer devices. And so if you ever have questions on what Windows you're running, by all means, you're more than welcome to reach out as well. Questions? Yes?
Do you have any guess how long Windows 10 is going to be good?
Oh boy, if I knew that, I would probably put a lot of money down on a bet. I have no idea. It's anyone's bet. Windows 11 is out. It's not too far different than Windows 10. I would say we probably have 3 or 4 years with 10 still. But Microsoft is all over the place with their timeline. Question?
How do you put emails into spam?
Emails into spam. So there is going to be a checkbox next to your email. So you're going to check it, or you can right click it, and there's going to be an option to move that message.
Oh,
You're going to move it to either junk or spam.
okay, thank you.
Of course. All right, I don't want to keep you all hostage. So those of you that want to stick after and ask some questions, I'll hang out for a bit. Thank you all for coming out. It was a pleasure getting to talk with you. And if anyone's interested, I do have a card up here that you can take with you. All right, guys? Thank you.